The wind came down from the hills like a growl that wouldn't end. Dust skittered across the porch, rattling dry leaves against the wood slats. The ranch house stood alone small, leaning slightly to one side, paint worn to bare boards in places. Windows shut tight against a world that hadn't offered anything kind in years. Inside, Elias Ward nursed a chipped mug of black coffee that had gone cold 2 hours ago. He didn't drink it for the taste, just for something to hold. Something to do with his hands. The fire in the hearth popped and hissed, spitting ash that danced like ghosts on the stone floor. He hadn't spoken a word since dawn. He hadn't. Needed to. No one left to speak to Dot. Then came the knock. Dot sharp. Too polite to be a drunk. Too real to be imagined. He stared at the door, as if expecting it to vanish like a cruel dream. But it didn't. The knock came again, 3 beats steady. No hurry. No fear. He set the mug down, stood slowly, and reached for the rifle leaning against the wall. Habit, not paranoia. He opened the door. There she was. A woman in a dust-covered shawl had pressed low, holding a small pot in both hands. Her face was sunburned, weather-beaten, but strong in the chin and soft in the eyes. And behind her, barely up to her waist, stood a little girl. The girl looked no older than 6 or 7. She wore a too-big dress, boots with holes at the toes, and clutched a doll that had seen better years. Her dark hair was in 2 crooked braids. She didn't say anything, just looked at him. The woman cleared her throat. I was told you needed a cook. Elias didn't move, didn't blink. By who? He asked. His voice was low and gruff from disuse. Lady at the feed store. Said you've been getting canned beans and jerky for months. She lifted the pot slightly. Figured maybe I could show you I can cook before I ask for the job. He looked at the pot, then at the girl, then back at the woman. What's your name? Clara Boone. This here's Sadie, my daughter. Sadie peeked from behind her mother's skirt and blinked up at him like a fox cub waiting to be chased. Off, Elias's jaw clenched. I don't hire strangers. Clara nodded. Then let me cook. 1 meal. If it don't warm your belly or your soul, we'll go. The word soul caught him. He hadn't heard it spoken in this house since before the fire. Before everything went black, he stepped back. Kitchen's through there. She stepped in with a whisper of worn leather and a scent of something warm pepper and potatoes. Maybe? Sadie followed, quiet as a mouse, eyes roaming the shadows of the cold, silent home. Elias watched them as Clara moved like she belonged, setting the pot on the stove and removing the lid. Steam curled up, carrying the smell of real food stew, thick with meat and herbs. He hadn't realized how hungry he was until that moment. Sadie sat at the far end of the long table. Her little legs didn't touch the floor. Elias remained standing, arms crossed. Clara ladled the stew into a bowl and slid it in front of him. I only had beef scraps and onions. Hope it's enough. He picked up the spoon, tasted it. Hot, savory, not. Just edible good. He didn't say anything. Sadie tilted her head and whispered across the table. He didn't spit it out, Mama. Clara chuckled under her breath. That's about the highest praise we'll get. Elias looked up, spoon halfway to his mouth. Sadie added with wide eyes, Mama don't eat unless I pretend it tastes good. Clara flushed. Sadie. The girl lowered her head. Elias cleared his throat. Girl speaks her mind. That's rare. They ate in silence for a time. The fire crackled. Outside, a hawk cried somewhere high above the canyon. After the meal, Clara began washing dishes in the tin basin. Sadie wandered toward the back window and stared out at the barn. That's off limits, Elias said without turning. Don't go near it. Sadie froze. Why? Because I said. Clara set the rag down. Mr. Ward, We don't mean to be trouble. We've been traveling long, looking for work. You'll get no sass or theft from me." He finally turned to face her. "You running from someone?" She met his gaze. "I'm running toward something better. That's all I care to say." Elias nodded once. He respected that answer. More than if she'd cried or lied. "I'll give you 1 week. You cook, clean, watch the girl. If it works out, you stay. If not, you ride on." Clara blinked like she hadn't expected a yes. 1 week, thank you." He glanced at Sadie. "She any good with horses?" Clara smiled. "She's good with almost everything." Sadie beamed. "Can I name one?" Elias smirked for the first time in months. "Only if you feed it too." They set up in the guest room. It hadn't been touched in years. Clara brushed off dust, shook out the sheets. Sadie made herself a nest in the corner, her doll tucked beside her. That night, after the lanterns dimmed and the stars hung heavy in the sky, Elias sat alone in the front room, fire low, fingers brushing the edge of a burned photograph. His wife's smile had faded from the paper, his boy's curls gone to ash. Nothing left but memory, and the charred barn that still stood out back like a scar that wouldn't heal. Then a sound, a whisper of movement, coming from the barn. He stood, hand already reaching for the rifle. Another sound, a creak. Someone out there. He rushed to the door, stepping into the cold, breath fogging, boots crunching on frost. Moonlight painted the field silver. The barn loomed like a sleeping beast. He swung the door wide. Nothing. Just silence. He stepped in slowly, lantern in one hand, rifle in the other. The air smelled of smoke and memory. Charred beams stretched above like the ribs of a beast. Then he saw it. Footprints. Small, fresh, leading to the corner where the old cradle used to sit. His jaw tightened. He turned and stormed back toward the house. Inside, he found Clara standing in the hallway, eyes wide, shawl wrapped tight. "I told you not to go in there." "I didn't, but—" She hesitated. Sadie wasn't in her bed. The front door creaked again. They both turned. Sadie stood there, barefoot, clutching her doll. "I thought I heard a baby crying," she whispered. "But it was just the wind." Elias's voice dropped. "You don't go near that barn. Ever." Sadie nodded, shrinking back. Clara scooped her up, murmuring comfort, shooting Elias a look that said more than words ever could. "Grief makes ghosts of us all." Elias turned away and stared into the fire. Outside, the wind howled again. But this time, the house wasn't completely silent. For the first time in years, someone had knocked. And stayed. The sun rose red the next morning, bleeding across the sky, like it didn't care the day was good or bad. Just that it started. Elias was already in the field by the time Clara woke. The rhythm of ranch life had long since fused into his bones feed. The animals mend the fence, walk the line, do the work before the memories got a chance to wake up too. Clara stepped into the kitchen in her bare feet, sleeves rolled to her elbows, face still marked from sleep. She paused for just a breath and looked around the house at the hard wood, the burnt edges of photographs, and the silence of rooms with no laughter. Then she began cooking. Bacon cracked in a pan, eggs popped in butter. She added chopped onion and dried thyme from a pouch she'd carried since her saloon days. A little touch of her old self, a whisper of something alive. Sadie wandered in next, eyes sleepy, dragging her doll. "You like eggs?" Clara asked. "Depends. Is Mr. Grumpy gonna eat with us again?" Clara smirked. "Only if he's brave." Elias came in then, boots stomping dust, gloves tucked in his belt. He paused in the doorway, staring like the scent of breakfast had struck him with a memory. "You make coffee?" he asked. Clara nodded. And biscuits. I'll call them edible when they rise right." Elias took his seat without a word. Sadie slid into her place and stared at him, unblinking. After a moment, she leaned in and whispered loudly to Clara, "He still looks like." He swallowed a porcupine. Elias's brow lifted. He glanced sideways at her. Some porcupines go down easier than others. Sadie grinned wide. The quiet broke. After breakfast, Clara scrubbed the floor, dusted the corners, and opened windows that hadn't seen wind in 3 years. Sadie helped where she could, her small hands polishing the old rifle above the hearth, asking questions about bullets and why cows didn't wear shoes by midday. The ranch house looked different, not clean lived in. Elias passed, through now and then with a hammer or saddle oil, saying little but noticing much. Clara moved through the space like it belonged to her. Not boldly, just naturally, as if she wasn't afraid to leave her scent in a place haunted by another woman's memory. That evening, they sat on the porch. Elias smoked. Clara sewed Sadie's torn sleeve. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. Just quiet. Then Clara broke it. "You ever loved someone you couldn't save?" she asked without looking up. Elias didn't answer. Not right away. Finally, he said, "Yes." She nodded. "Me too." She didn't press, and he didn't explain. But for a moment, something passed between them like a shared wound. Deep, still bleeding. But seen later that night, Elias stood by the barn again. The wind was calm, but his fingers trembled. He hadn't stepped inside since the fire. He thought about the footprints he'd seen, about Sadie's words. "I thought I heard a baby crying." He hadn't heard the baby, but he'd dreamed it. He turned and went back inside. The next morning, Clara made chicken and dumplings. Sadie chased a rabbit out by the corral and named it Sheriff Fluffy. Elias actually laughed once, short and surprised, like it escaped without permission. But the piece cracked when Clara went into Dust Creek for supplies. It was a short ride, just 2 miles down the hill. Sadie stayed behind, playing with the horses under Elias's eye. Clara needed flour and sugar, nothing more. But as she paid, the saloon doors creaked open and 3 men stepped inside, dirty, lean, armed. One of them, grimy hat, scar across the jaw, asked the barkeep in a voice that dripped molasses, "You seen a woman come through? Pretty with a kid. Might be calling herself Boone." The barkeep shook his head, lying too fast. Clara shrank back behind a shelf of beans, heart thudding. She recognized the voice. Ezekiel Frost, one of her late husband's old riding partners. Bad blood in his bones. Mean for the sake of it. She didn't wait to hear more. She left through the back and rode home like the wind had teeth. She burst through the door, hair loose, eyes wild. Elias stood. "What happened?" "They're looking for me," she whispered. "One of his gang, Zeke Frost. He was in town." "Who's he to you?" "My husband's old pack. After he died, I took something they wanted. A ledger, names, numbers. I was going to trade it for safety, but I hid it instead. They think I still have it." "Do you?" Clara hesitated. "No, I hid it so well, I don't know if I could find it again." Elias cursed under his breath. Sadie peeked out from behind the door. "Are they gonna hurt Mama?" Elias crouched in front of her. "Not if I can help it." She nodded solemnly. "I trust you, Mr. Grumpy." He almost smiled again. Almost. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She wandered the house, pausing outside Elias's door, where a faint light flickered under the frame. Knocked. "Come in," came the gruff reply. He sat at the desk, polishing a revolver. Beside it, an old tin badge. Sheriff's star. Dull with time. "You were law?" He nodded. "Long ago. Before I married. Before I saw how easy it was to be." A killer with a badge. Clara sat across from him. Why didn't you say anything before? Didn't think it mattered. They sat in silence. A moment longer. Clara spoke softly. I was a singer once. In Laredo. Before I married Marcus. I wore blue dresses and sang songs I didn't write. Men tossed coins and sometimes promises. What? Changed? She looked away. I thought I could change him. I was wrong. They didn't speak of love. Just survival. Before she left, Elias said, if those men come here, I won't let them take you. She turned, eyes shining. Why? Because Sadie needs you, and I reckon maybe I do too. The next morning, Clara searched through the trunk they brought from their old wagon. She dug past blankets, broken laces, a faded photograph of Sadie. As a baby. She found the doll. The one Sadie had never let go of. She turned it over. A seam. Roughly stitched. She picked up a knife, then cut. Gently. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was the ledger. A list of names. Accounts. Bribes. Lawmen. Ranchers. Traders. And one name underlined twice. Elias Ward. Her blood ran cold. He'd said he was a lawman. That he quit. But what if he was listed here because he'd stayed too long? Done too much? She folded the paper again, stuffed it back into the doll, and didn't tell him. Not yet. That evening, Elias found Sadie outside, staring at the barn again. You remember what I said? I didn't go in, she said quickly. But there's flowers growing by the door. He frowned. Walked over. She was right. Wildflowers. Purple ones. He knelt down. In the ash, under the burned beam. A small patch of life. He heard a sound behind him. Clara. Watching. Silent. He looked up at her. Sometimes, he murmured, the fire don't kill everything. She stepped closer. Not touching him, but near. Together, they stood in the twilight, staring at the impossible blooms in the ruin of what once was. The storm was coming, but something was growing too. The wind picked up before dawn, kicking dust off the hills in wide, sweeping arcs. Elias stood by the porch rail, coffee in hand, watching the horizon. He had that old feeling again, a pressure behind the ribs, like a storm was already here. Just hadn't introduced itself yet. Inside, Clara watched from the window. She hadn't slept well. Not since finding Elias's name in that ledger. She hadn't told him. Not yet. She needed to see who he was now, not who he'd once ridden with, or who had written his name on a list like a blood debt. Sadie burst through the door in boots too big, dragging her doll and a lasso made from knotted curtain cord. I caught a chicken, she declared. No, you didn't, Elias said. Sadie grinned. Well, I almost caught a chicken. Clara laughed, and for a second, Elias did too. A real laugh. Not just air through his teeth. Sadie blinked. You can laugh. Elias wiped. His mouth embarrassed. Just once. Don't go expecting more. Sadie crossed her arms. You're more fun when you smile. Mama says laughter makes your soul shine. Elias looked at Clara. She shrugged. Don't look at me. That's straight from her heart. Elias muttered. Heart's dangerous business. Later that morning, Clara took Sadie to the far fence to help mend a break where coyotes had been digging. Elias watched. Them from a distance, mother and daughter, shoulders touching as they worked. He hadn't seen family like that in years. Not since fire and loss had turned his life to ash. Then hooves sounded. He turned to see a single rider in town, thin, long-legged. Horse, hat pulled low, coat dusted gray. The kind of man who carried shadow with him. Elias's stomach tightened. He grabbed his rifle. The rider dismounted slow, like he had all the time in the world. Clara and Sadie were already walking back when Elias met him by the barn. You lost? Elias asked. The man looked up. Scar down his cheek, yellow-toothed. Grin. No, sir. I reckon I'm found. Name's Zeke Frost. You got something that don't belong to you. I've got a rifle. You want that? Zeke laughed once. No, what I'm after smaller. Female. Maybe 6. Talks a lot. Carries a doll. Elias's jaw tightened. Ain't no one here by that description. Zeke stepped forward. See? We had a ledger. Kept our dealings clean. Clara Boone stole it. Ran off. I'm just trying to get it back. You one of Marcus Boone's boys? Elias asked. Zeke's smile widened. Was, before he took a bullet in the back. That bullet did the world a favor. Zeke's face darkened. Careful who you insult, cowboy. Some ghosts walk real mean. Elias cocked the rifle. You want to find that ledger. You best ride back to hell and start digging. Zeke chuckled. Oh, I'll be back. With friends. He swung onto his horse. But next time, I won't knock. That night, Elias and Clara sat at the kitchen table. The house felt smaller, tighter, like the air had been sucked out. He knows. Elias said. Clara nodded slowly. And I think he knows about the ledger too, Elias added. She met his eyes, then looked away. I found it, she whispered. In Sadie's doll. Elias didn't flinch. She pulled it from under her shawl and slid it across the table. I read it, she said. He didn't ask what she saw. I was on that list, he said, not proud of it. Rode with men like Zeke. Took money. Pressured. Ranchers. Did worse. Clara's voice barely rose. What changed you? He looked down at his hands. My wife. She made me quit. She saw what I was and believed I could be better. I thought if I left it all behind, it would never find me. Again. It always finds us, Clara said quietly. He nodded. The fire that killed them might not have been an accident. Clara's breath caught. I was supposed to testify. One of the men I'd turned against, he knew. I think he sent someone to silence me. I just never proved it. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. You have now. The next day passed like a fuse burning toward dynamite. Elias cleaned the rifles. Clara made food that would keep. Sadie didn't know what was happening, but she was sharp. She could feel it. When you going to town? She asked. Soon. Clara said, braiding her hair. Can I come? Clara knelt. No, baby. Not this time. I need you here, and I need you brave. Sadie hugged her. I'm always brave. Clara's heart ached. I know you are. That night, the men returned. 3 horses. Zeke at the lead. No knock this time. Just gunfire. 1 shot into the air. 1 through the porch post. Elias and Clara crouched behind the wagon. Rifles ready. Sadie hid inside the root cellar, wrapped in blankets and holding her doll tight. Zeke's voice rang out. Give us the ledger and the woman, and we'll ride off clean. Elias shouted back. You ride off now, or I bury you where you stand. Bad choice, Zeke snarled. Gunfire exploded. Elias rolled and fired, taking 1 man through the shoulder. Clara took out another with her pistol clean shot to the leg. He went down screaming. Zeke kicked his horse and ran toward the barn. Elias chased inside. The moonlight poured through gaps in the burned roof. Zeke stood near the wildflowers, laughing. Funny place to die, Ward. I ain't dying today. Fired grazed Elias's arm. Elias roared and tackled him. They fell, fists flying, boots kicking up ash. Zeke pulled a knife. Elias knocked it loose, grabbed the butt of his revolver, and smashed it into Zeke's temple. Zeke went limp. Elias stood, panting, covered in soot and blood. He looked at the flowers again, still standing, still blooming. Back at the house, Clara was binding Elias's arm. Sadie sat at the table, solemn. Did you kill the bad man? she asked. No, Elias said. Heal. Hang. Law's coming, Sadie nodded. Good. I like you better when you don't kill. Elias smiled faintly. Me too. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. You saved us, she whispered. No, he said. You walked in with Stu and a knock. That's what saved me. The night calmed. The fire crackled again, not angry this time. Just warmed out Clara. Laid her head in Elias's lap. Sadie curled up by the hearth. For the first time in years, the silence in the house wasn't painful. It was peaceful dot, and when Clara drifted off to sleep, Elias whispered, Maybe hearts can shine again. The morning after the gunfight was too quiet dot, no wind, no birds. Just the groan of wood and the soft shuffle of life returning to a place that had nearly been turned into a battlefield. Clara stepped outside with Sadie, her hand resting lightly on the girl's head. Sadie looked around like she wasn't sure the danger was really gone. It's over, Clara said, more to herself than to her daughter. He kept his word. Inside, Elias sat on the porch steps with his shirt off and arm freshly stitched. Clara had done her best, but her fingers had shaken once she saw how deep the gash went. Still, he hadn't complained. Not once. She approached him with a canteen and a clean bandage. Might need a fresh wrap. He looked up. Might need a new arm. She knelt and peeled back the dried cloth gently. You've had worse? She asked. Elias gave a dry chuckle. One time I got stabbed in the ribs by a gambler with a grudge and a spoon. Clara looked at him deadpan. A spoon? Long story. I lost a poker game and my dignity. For the first time since she arrived, she laughed a real one. Not nervous. Not polite. He watched her for a moment, then reached up and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. Clara, he said softly, you don't have to stay here. She blinked. What? The men are gone. The ledger's safe. You could go now, if you wanted. Dust Creek's got places. Somewhere bigger might need a cook. She straightened, frowning. Is that what you want? For us to leave? Elias looked down, jaw flexing. I don't want to chain you here. This place, it's full of ghosts. Clara stood, her voice firm. Then we sweep out the ghosts. Open the windows. Bake biscuits. Laugh loud. Make room for the living. Elias met her gaze. You think that's possible? I think you're already doing it. They buried the last outlaw behind the barn. Zeke Frost would be handed over to the circuit judge when he arrived, but one of his men had bled out in the night. Elias gave him a hole, but no prayers. I don't mourn men who take children's lives in their teeth, he said, shoveling dirt over the pine box. Sadie watched from the steps. She clutched her doll, but didn't ask questions. She was growing up fast in the way only children in hard times do. When Elias returned to the porch, she looked up at him with big eyes. Is he in the ground forever? Yes, ma'am. He said gently. Good, she whispered. Now Mama won't have to run anymore. That evening, Clara brought out the ledger. She placed it on the kitchen table. Between them, I don't want this following us, she said. These names, this paper, it's all poison. Elias nodded. Then let's burn it. He fetched a match, lit the hearth low, and handed it to her. Clara hesitated. Then she tossed the ledger into the flames. They watched it curl, blacken, and vanish. Sadie peeked over their shoulders. Can I burn something too? Clara turned. What do you want to burn, baby? Sadie held out her doll. Both adults stared. No, honey, Clara said gently. You love that doll. Sadie shrugged. Not anymore. It had secrets in it. Clara bent and took the doll. She looked at Elias. He nodded once. They placed it in the fire together. It didn't scream. It didn't curse. It just turned to ash. Sometimes that's all a past deserves. Days passed. The fence got mended. Chickens laid again. The horses no longer spooked at every shadow. Elias taught Sadie how to saddle a horse. She named her favorite one, Lightning, and asked if she could ride him to school one day. Clara began singing again low, soft tunes from saloon days. Elias didn't say anything when he heard her through the window, but he stood still until the last note faded every time. One afternoon, a stranger rode in, but this one wore a badge. Marshal Granger, tall and clean-shaven, with a skeptical eye, and a soft spot for biscuits. He read Elias's report, took custody of Zeke Frost, and said he'd make sure no more trouble trailed back this way. Then he turned to Clara. "You're on no wanted list, ma'am. And given what you've done, I'd say the county owes you thanks." Clara nodded, but her grip on Sadie's hand didn't ease until the marshal rode away, dust rising behind him. That night, Elias lit a lantern and walked to the barn alone. The wildflowers still grew, purple and defiant. He sat near them and looked up at the moon. His wife's face came to him, not as she died, but how she laughed, the way she tucked their boy under her arm, the way she kissed Elias's cheek when he was grumpy and told him, "You'll be all right someday." He whispered, "You were right." Then he stood, walked back to the house, and didn't look over his shoulder. The next morning, Clara was already baking biscuits again. Elias sat down, watching her move, flour on her cheek, hair tucked under. A scarf. He could get used to this. The smell. The sound of Sadie chasing a chicken. The way Clara hummed even when she didn't realize it. He cleared his throat. "I've been thinking." Clara didn't stop kneading. "Uh-oh, about names." She glanced up. "What about them?" He scratched his jaw. "Sadie's name is Boone. Yours too, I guess. That was a man who hurt you. A name tied to blood and running." Clara's hands froze. Elias went on. "I don't want to take anything from you. But if either of you ever wanted a different name, there's room for it here." Clara swallowed. "What name are you offering?" He stood, stepped close, touched her flour-dusted hands. "Ward." Her lips parted. She stared at him. Heart in her throat. Sadie peeked in from the door. "Did he just ask you to be his biscuit lady forever?" Clara laughed, wiped her eyes. Elias smiled. "Close enough." Clara turned to Sadie. "Well, you want to stay on this ranch? Be Sadie Ward?" Sadie tilted her head. "Will I still get to ride Lightning?" "Every morning," Elias said. Sadie beamed. "Then yeah. Let's be Wards." Later that night, the three of them sat on the porch. The stars above were sharp, clean, and bright. Elias cradled a mug of coffee. Clara leaned against his side. Sadie had fallen asleep between them. A new doll tucked under her arm, a gift from Elias. Stitched by hand. The wind brushed past like it had somewhere else to be. And the house? It didn't feel haunted anymore. Sometimes healing doesn't come with loud declarations. Sometimes it comes in stew, in small footsteps, in laughter that surprises you, or in a knock that changes everything. And sometimes the home you buried becomes the home where you begin again. Someone out. They're still knocking. Maybe your story starts when you open the door. Good night, folks.